Kia ora team. So it's time for Big Boys Boxing to put out the first top 15 ratings as of today, the 6th of July 2019. So it's not only based on resume, it's based on performance and also the eye test, in my opinion. I'm not going to argue with anybody who disagrees with my top 15. I'm just putting this out there for people to comment on, get some talk going. But firstly, I'd like to start with some honourable mentions. There's 6 guys that didn't make my top 15 that I think do deserve to be mentioned. Firstly, no particular order, I've got Filip Hrgovic, who's 8-0, up and coming Croatian prospect. He's got a couple of decent wins under his belt by the likes of Kevin Johnson, Amir Mansour, within 8 fights of becoming a pro, so not too bad. And I think Filip Hrgovic has a long future ahead of him in the heavyweight division. My second honourable mention, Dave Allen. Some may laugh at that, some may not, but Dave Allen has pretty good form recently. He's got a couple of good wins over guys like Nick Webb, who at the time was unbeaten. There was a lot of hype around him. He knocked him out. And he's also got a good win over former WBA regular champion Lucas Brown. Stopped him with a body shot. So I think he's worth mentioning definitely at present. He also has a fight coming up against David Price. And if Dave Allen knocks out David Price, he could quite possibly crack my top 15. Next on the list, Ajit Kabayel at 19-0. He's the current EBU champion. He gained that belt fighting Derek Chisora. Hasn't fought a hell of a lot of other competition yet, but he certainly has a lot of skills. He's not a huge banger, but he is a heavyweight, so he can bang. I'm interested to see how he's going to go and if he's going to take some more competitive fights in the near future. Next on my honourable mentions is Joe Joyce at 9-0. He's an older heavyweight, but he's a 6'6" guy who can move. I mean, he does a lot of capoeira. He's got a couple of decent sort of wins, but nothing to write home about as yet. His best win, I'd say, at present is over Bermain Stavern, a former WBC champion. But Joe Joyce has a big step-up fight coming up soon against Bryant B.Y. Jennings, and that's going to be an interesting one to watch to see how he gets on against a skilled fighter. I don't think Jennings poses too much threat with regard to power, but he could certainly possibly outbox Joe Joyce for a decision, so keep an eye on that fight. Next on my honourable mentions is Sergey Kuzmin at 15-0. This guy isn't a huge heavyweight, but he's a very accomplished amateur and he can box. He's got a couple of decent wins. He's got a very good win over David Price. I think that'd be his best win. But he's not a guy that people want to mess with unless they have to. So we'll see how Sergey Kuzmin goes in the near future. He did have a good fight against Amir Mansour that only lasted a couple of rounds, and then they had a head clash and got stopped, and they never run that one back. I would have liked to have seen that one at the time, but Amir Mansour has now retired and he's well past his best. After facing Filip Hrgovic and Efer Jagbar, he's decided to hang the gloves up. So next on my honourable mentions list is Michael Hunter, former cruiserweight who's 17-1 with no draws. His one loss was to Alexander Usyk in the cruiserweight division, but has since moved up and he's got a couple of good wins. Recently he fought Fabio Maldonado, who used to be a former MMA fighter, but his best win I think is over Oh, it's a toss-up. I'd probably say his best win is over Martin Bakoli Alanga, but there is also the more notable name in Alexander Ustinov, who he beat. But a very bright future for Michael Hunter in the heavyweight division. Some don't look at him like he's a threat to anybody, but the boy can box. He might look uncoordinated, but he's got heart, a gas tank, he can move, and he keeps coming. So look out for Michael Hunter. Alright, so that wraps up the honourable mentions. Let's get into the top 15. At number 15, I have Ifa Ajagba at 10-0. It was a bit of a toss-up for me between Filip Hrgovic and Ifa Ajagba, who got into the top 15, and what decided it for me was both of these prospects' second best win. I think both of their first best win was over Amir Mansour presently, but the second best win for Hrgovic was Kevin Johnson, and the second best win for Ifa Ajagba is Michelle Wallace. So I think Michelle Wallace is a lot younger, hungrier, has a lot more skills. Kevin Johnson tends to shell up, try to last the distance, and maybe try and throw a counter right hand somewhere through the fight. So there's not a lot of threat from Kevin Johnson these days. I thought Michelle Wallace was more likely to try and put up a fight, but he got outskilled and stopped. So Ifa Ajagba is my number 15, and to note, he has a fight coming up that's going to be against another up-and-coming prospect who has a high KO ratio, Ali Aran Demirazin. So if he wins that fight, Demirazin is actually ranked in a couple of sanctioning bodies, so expect to see Ifa Ajagba in the rankings if he beats Ali Aran Demirazin in the coming weeks. Number 14, I've got Derek Chisora. He's at 30-9 with no draws. Now, some of you might think, well, why have you got Derek Chisora in there? He's a gatekeeper. He is a gatekeeper, but he's shown some fairly decent form recently. He knocked out Carlos Takam, who's been a title contender a few times. Yes, Derek Chisora does have 9 losses, but you've got to go and look at his resume and see who those 9 losses are against. A few of those losses maybe shouldn't have been losses. Fights where he hasn't turned up in the right frame of mind or trained well enough. So it is what it is, but at present, based on his performance against Dillion White prior to getting knocked out and his win over Carlos Takam, I think he deserves the number 14 spot at present. At number 13, I've got Robert Helenius at 28-2. He's got 2 losses, one via knockout to Johan Dorpa in a fight where he was winning quite comfortably, but got caught with one big shot that put him down. He stood up, stumbled all over the place, grabbed the ropes, and the ref stopped the fight. This happens in boxing sometimes, and up until then, people were calling Robert Helenius the next replacement for Vladimir Klitschko. So after that, he had a very short notice fight. 2 weeks notice he got to fight Dillion White. And the first round, he was actually doing pretty well. The second round, he was also doing very well. Rocked Dillion White, but in the process broke his hand. Ended up running for the rest of the night and lost the fight on points. But he has had a very good knockout win over Erkan Tepa, and he has an upcoming fight that's going to be very competitive against Gerald Washington. So stay tuned for that. And like I say, I think Robert Helenius is actually a bit underrated. Many people think he's well past his best, but he's not really old, and he's been injury plagued throughout his career. So, given the right circumstances, Robert Helenius could beat a lot of boxers, in my opinion. Number 12, I have Oscar Revis, who is 26-0. Oscar Revis was a very accomplished amateur. He beat Kubrat Pulev at the Olympics. He beat Andy Ruiz Jr. at the Pan Am Games, which were Olympic qualifiers. This guy can box. He's a smaller heavyweight, he's only 6 foot. And he fought a whole lot of nobodies during his pro career, up until he fought Fabio Maldonado up in Canada. And he had been fighting a lot in Canada because he couldn't get a license anywhere else. He had a detached retina. It happened to be the problem that stopped him getting a license, but it's all sorted now. He got a license, got a good fight outside of Canada against Bryant Jennings, and he stopped them in the final round. So that has gotten Oscar Revis onto the scene quick, smart. He's ranked across the board, and he's got a big upcoming fight against number 1 in 2 governing bodies, Dillion White. And he's fighting him for a final eliminator for the WBC mandatory and for the interim title. So Oscar Revis at number 12. At number 11, I've got Adam Kovnerski, who is at 19-0. A Polish-born American fighter who is a very much pressure fighter. Comes forward, throws a lot of punches, quite often takes 5 to land 5, quite often gets cut. He's beaten a couple of good opposition, the likes of Gerald Washington, Charles Martin, both former title contenders or title challengers. He now has an upcoming fight against veteran boxer Chris Arreola. Should be a pretty straightforward win for Adam Kovnerski. He's a PBC fighter, so we'll see what happens with Adam Kovnerski. Is he going to be saved for Deontay Wilder, or is he going to continue trying to chase his own career to do his own thing? We'll see, but I've got him at number 11. At number 10, I have Luis King Kong Ortiz, who is 31-1. Now, I've got Luis Ortiz right down at number 10 because he hasn't actually got that many decent wins on his resume. Many people say it's because he's the boogeyman. People are scared of him. I'm quite realistic. I look at it as he's not that marketable because he doesn't speak much English. He's a high-risk, low-reward fighter. Now, he has fought and lost to Deontay Wilder for the WBC heavyweight title, and he's also got a rematch for that same bout against Deontay Wilder in September this year. He's fought a couple of guys in the meantime, like Razvan Kajanus, Christian Hammer, who he didn't look great against. His best win for me is Bryant Jennings, and Bryant Jennings isn't looking as good as he used to be now. The fight against Jennings was a cracker to watch. There was a lot of inside fighting going on, and Ortiz basically out-muscled Bryant Jennings on the inside. I thought it was the wrong game plan for Jennings in that fight, but it was a good fight to watch. And Luis Ortiz is a very technical boxer, but he's 40 years old, well past his best, and many speculate that he is a lot older than 40 years old, being Cuban, and their birth records aren't exactly accurate as well. So I've got Luis Ortiz at number 10. At number 9, I've got Kubrat Pulev, who's at 27-1. Now, Kubrat Pulev at present is the IBF mandatory. He won that spot twice. So he's beaten Huey Fury in a final eliminator for that spot. And recently he's had a fight against Bogdan Dinu, who he stopped. But Kubrat Pulev is a somewhat underrated fighter, I think. He's got probably the best jab in the division at present. He's got one loss to Vladimir Klitschko when he was at his dominant best. But hasn't really fought the highest level of competition pretty much ever. I mean, he fought Samuel Peter when he's well past his best. He's fought a few fights that are much lower level than what he was, but you know, they're safe fights, and I don't expect he'll be taking any risks while he's holding on to this IBF mandatory position. I've got Kubrat Pulev at number 9. At number 8, I've got Joseph Parker, who is 26-2. Recently had a fight against Alex Leopai, a former title contender, former title challenger, who took 10 rounds to beat him down and get him out of there. Leopai's well past his best, didn't throw a lot of punches in that. And Parker has had 2 losses. 2 losses to guys who I have ranked inside my top 5. But those are his only 2 losses. He's got a few decent wins as well against the likes of current 3-belt unified champion Andy Ruiz. A majority decision win or a split decision? Majority decision win over Andy Ruiz. It was a very close fight. A UD win over Carlos Takam. A UD win over Huey Fury. Those would be Joseph Parker's best wins. So he's on a rebuilding process at the moment. He's taken 2 lower level fights, but hoping to fight 3 more times this year, or 2 more at least, and we'll see how Joseph Parker goes. I'd like to see him in some competitive fights, but I've got him at number 8 at present. Number 7, I've got Alexander Povetkin, who's 34-2. He's got 2 losses, one to Anthony Joshua and one to Vladimir Klitschko. But Alexander Povetkin has been in the ring with a lot of different world level boxers. I've simply got him ahead of Joseph Parker due to the level that he's been fighting on for so long. If you add all of the decent level opponents together, I think he's got a better resume than Parker. I mean, they've both got 2 losses on there, but they're both to high level opposition. So I've got Alexander Povetkin at number 7. At number 6, I've got Darrell Big Pharmacy Miller. Now, Darrell Miller is currently on a WBA suspension due to taking a whole lot of drugs prior to his scheduled fight with Anthony Joshua, where he dropped out because of the failed tests. And it looks like we're going to see him back in the ring soon. But he is unbeaten at 25-0 with 1 draw. His 1 draw was to Joey Daweko, I think. I think it was Joey Daweko. Darrell Miller, unbeaten, comes forward. He's got a few good wins on his record, but kind of faded level guys, besides Gerald Washington. Gerald Washington had come off a loss to Deontay Wilder and then fought Darrell Miller. Darrell Miller overwhelmed him, but Darrell Miller's got a few half-decent wins on there, and with the likes of Marius Vuk, Johan Dorper, even Thomas Adamek, who's well past his best as well. But yeah, Darrell Miller, unbeaten, come forward, heaps of gas. Well, at least I think he's got heaps of gas, unless it's all PEDs, but we're going to find out when he gets back in the ring. There's a possibility he could fight Tyson Fury in October after his suspension is up, but we will see. I've got Darrell Miller at number 6. At number 5, I've got Dillion White at 25-1-0. Now, Dillion White has put a string of decent wins together since his loss to Anthony Joshua, prior to Anthony Joshua being a world champion. Some of the wins aren't as good as they should have been, but looking at Dillion White's next fight against Oscar Revis, it's going to put him into a mandatory position if he can get hold of that title. But Dillion White definitely has a few wins to write home about. He's got a knockout win over Derek Chisora. He's got a decision win over Derek Chisora. He's got a very close, he nearly got stopped in the final round against Joseph Parker, but he managed to get out of that one with a win. Joseph Parker, being a former WBO world champion, is a scalp to write home about. So I've got Dillion White at number 5. At number 4, I've got former 3-belt unified champion Anthony Joshua at 22-1. Now, Anthony Joshua is waiting for a rematch later on in the year with Andy Ruiz Jr. He was the number 1 heavyweight in the world, in my opinion, for quite some time, holding 3 belts. Firstly, winning the IBF belt against Charles Martin, then taking the vacant WBA belt against Vladimir Klitschko in a thrilling fight to watch, and then taking the WBO belt off Joseph Parker in a stinker of a fight to watch. Then losing it to Andy Ruiz recently, got stopped. So I've got him at number 4. At number 3, I have the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury, at 28-0-1. Now I've got him down at number 3 because he doesn't hold any belts at present. He's only ever been in 2 elite level fights, one being his fight against Vladimir Klitschko, where he took the 3 belts off Klitschko but got stripped of 1, and then had his hiatus due to mental illness, drug abuse, whatever you want to call it. He's come back, he's fought 3 people that aren't even inside the top 50 for me. But he has fought Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion. I thought he won that fight, but technically it came out as a draw. So it is what it is. Maybe we'll get to see the rematch in the next 6 months. Maybe we won't. I hope we can run it back and get it sorted out. But it is what it is. I've got Tyson Fury at number 3. Number 2, I've got Andy Ruiz Jr., who's at 33-1. His one loss was a title attempt against Joseph Parker for the vacant WBO belt. Like I said earlier, it was a very close match. Some thought Ruiz won, some thought Parker won. It is what it is. But he got another shot thanks to Darrell Miller carrying around his pharmacy in his ass. And he took Anthony Joshua out. Waiting for a rematch to see what happens there. But I've got Andy Ruiz at number 2. And at number 1, I've got the Bronze Bomber, Deontay Wilder, at 41-0-1. Now, Deontay Wilder, I don't think his resume is as weak as many say. However, it's not a big list of elite fighters. He's got 2 very good wins on his resume in the form of Luis Ortiz. Sorry, he's got 1 very, very good win on his resume in the form of Luis Ortiz. I don't think any of the other wins are anybody to write home about. You know, Gerald Washington, Johan Dorpa, Eric Molina, Dominic Brazil. Man, how many of those guys are in my top 15? 0. Oh, Luis Ortiz. Sorry, is the only one I've got. But he has fought Tyson Fury, fought to a draw as well. Tyson Fury is a very good boxer, lineal champion. So, as it stands, I think Deontay Wilder deserves the number 1 spot at present. He's got a lot more experience in the ring than Tyson Fury. I don't think the best 2 wins of either guy is much better than the other one. However, Deontay Wilder has held the WBC belt for 4 years now, so I think he deserves the number 1 spot for now. But things can change. We will see. So let us know how much of my top 15 you do agree with, how much you disagree with, and we can get some conversation going. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one. Big Boys Boxing, we out. See you.